Today I'm speaking with Micki McAllen. Micki, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to meet you. And Micki is from New Zealand, but she moved to New London, UK, a few years ago, and very jealous of that. It's awesome. I've been to London a couple times, but need to get back there. It's been far too long. Micki is on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the handle Apostate Barbie. I have all the links for that beneath this video. Please do check her out, like and subscribe. And she was a JW, a Jehovah's Witness, for over 30 years. She did recently leave, and we're going to hear her story. But before we get into the details of your story, could you just tell us a bit more about yourself and some fun things?
Cool. I'm a dog groomer. I love dogs. I love traveling, and moving to the UK has been absolutely amazing and opened a door for me to get to Europe. Love the color pink. Up until literally 2 weeks ago, I had pink hair. But yeah, that's me. I'm pretty funny. I hope. I hope that comes across, and just trying to raise awareness about the Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's awesome. Do you have any dogs yourself?
I did for 14 years, but he passed away not long before I moved to the UK.
Okay, I'm
So
sorry to hear that.
yeah.
What's your next breed that you would get if you got another dog?
So the dog I had before was a Pomeranian, and Nacho, that was his name. He was just the best. So I kind of want to get another Pomeranian, but a different color. However, I'm also very aware that there are a lot of dogs that need to be rescued. So trying to find like a rescue pom if I can, and I'll just know when it's right.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. We're looking forward to hearing your story. I will jump in with some questions, especially being that you came from a JW background. There's a lot I don't know about the nuances and details, but I'm looking forward to just hearing your story. But if you could tell us, how you first got started with JW World.
My mum was one of the study converts from the door knocking. She, when I was 5 years old, accepted the Watch Hour and Awake magazine, and started studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses. So it was like a big part of my life for about, I'd say, 10 years, with her being a study. And for Jehovah's Witnesses, that would be kind of a long time to be studying with a person that you've knocked on the door with.
Does that mean that she was
So
interested but not committing?
yes. So she kept doing the studies, but would go to the meetings every now and then. It wasn't like she didn't get baptized, which is the big thing that witnesses want you to do when you start studying with them, and ideally within like 2 years max. Um, it's not like a rule or anything, but it was just kind of the general, like you put the pressure on to get someone baptized and fully recruit them. But we moved around a lot when I was a child, and I had a stepdad who wasn't interested in the religion. So I think that came into play. But for me, at 5 years old, it became part of my life. Like it was all I knew. I enjoyed going to the meetings and meeting people, making friends. I knew it as like in my opinion at the time, as a child, a safe place, because my mum was quite abusive growing up, and it was the one place where she couldn't yell at me or hit me or do any of these things. So I would say,
Mm.
the completely different experience than most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who hated going to the meetings and stuff. And I was like, oh, I like it. I can just sit here and nothing bad's going to happen.
That part of the story hit so hard. When you were there as a JW, did you feel like as a child you were understanding pretty early on what the messaging was? And like, for an evangelical perspective, I'm sure you eventually learned, our message was like, you're a sinner, you need a sin fixer, you need a rescuer, and Jesus died in your place. So just believe and you're covered. What was like the main messaging that you remember starting to hear as a child?
It was definitely, and they have a lot of pictures in their books, and there's specifically one for children. It was the messaging that you'll be destroyed at Armageddon if you don't become a Jehovah's Witness. And it was terrifying.
So they start you
Um,
off with very light reading at that age appropriate.
yeah, just a quick little.
That's insane.
And I think they've watered it down a little bit recently. Like it's not as graphic when it comes to the children's material, but it's the messaging is still the same.
Mm. So did you feel like knowing that was the truth as far as you knew, that did you feel like you were on the right side of that, and that you were like, I'm glad I'm going to be okay, but I feel bad for everyone else, but I'm good? Or was that terrifying? Like, I wonder if I'm going to make it.
It was definitely that, especially as a child, because my mum wasn't baptized. She didn't get baptized until I was 15. So those 10 years, I was thinking, oh no, like what if Armageddon happens right now and my mom doesn't get baptized because I fall under her umbrella of like headship? She'll be destroyed and therefore I'll be destroyed and my brother as well. So it was kind of like there's this pressure on you all the time. And I feel like I was very much the religious good girl. Like I did what I was asked to do. I suppose that this was also part of the effects of being my mother's daughter, where I just had to be quiet, sit still, listen, be nice. And I took it all in and I was very much I took that responsibility, I think, on my shoulders that mum has to get baptized, my brother has to get baptized, I have to get baptized. Like, we have to do this or else we'll be destroyed.
So they link your parents up as your head even for salvation?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. At what age is that? Just like the age of accountability that you become your own, or when does that change?
I think so. I think it's like, when you become an adult and it's up to them when they decide that you're an adult, I guess. But I would say
Right.
about 18. Because I definitely felt responsibility as well for the kids I went to school with and thinking, oh no, they're going to be destroyed because their parents don't believe.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's very, I don't know. I don't know if there's any other Jehovah's Witnesses watching that can clarify the age there, but in my head, I was thinking about 18
Gotcha. What were the
or until you
services?
get baptized.
Okay.
Sorry.
What were
Yeah.
the services like? Do you remember some of those memories?
So there's a big thing in the States that the kingdom halls don't have windows, but for us in New Zealand, we definitely, almost all of them, bar one that I went to, all had windows. So it would be a lot of just sort of sitting there and looking out the window, and wishing, that you could be at the beach or out with your friends or, doing all of these other things. I say that for when I'm older, like when I was like in my teens, that's all I wanted to do was just go hang out with friends and go to the beach. And here I was stuck at the meeting, which they call it the meeting.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
in a lot of ours, there was a lot of seriousness, with the messaging and the
Hmm.
sermonizing, but there was also a lot of the sense of joy, especially for kids. And we do vacation Bible school, and you're clapping and having fun. I've got the joy, joy, joy down in my heart. Was there a sense of joy mixed in with the harsh messages, or like how do they portray it all?
So I definitely feel like in the 90s and 2000s, it was definitely very serious. We didn't really have a lot of that kind of joy, or what they do now is they have like a lot of children's videos and bits for kids. It's a lot more interactive, I suppose. But in the 90s, it was very boring. We didn't have videos. We just had like the Watchtower, the Awake. But we studied the Watchtower at the Sunday meeting. There was a public talk before that, and sometimes you'd get a speaker who was quite lively and charismatic. But for the most part, they were fairly boring, and it was very boring about like just pleasing Jehovah, living your life to these standards and making sure you don't get destroyed at Armageddon. Um, yeah, it wasn't very entertaining.
Hmm. Now, is it correct that you would not have described your experience as a JW as if you had a personal relationship with God? Is that correct? That's just not verbiage you all would have used?
No, they do. They want you to view Jehovah as your father. Um,
Okay.
and I remember quite distinctly, like when I was visiting someone else, I went to the States a few times, which I can go into later because it was all Jehovah's Witness related. But I met someone there and they were like, do you have trouble viewing Jehovah as your father because your real dad passed away when you were younger and you didn't have a relationship with him? And I remember at the time thinking, oh, that's probably why I do have trouble. Like I don't I would sit there and think like, oh, there's something wrong with me that I don't see Jehovah as like a real person in the way that they would sort of talk about him during the meetings, that you have to have a good friendship with Jehovah and a friendship with God. And I would think, how can I have this friendship when the other person's not like answering me back very clearly or at all?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I was part of it.
Now, did your mom get more committed eventually?
She did. She had a brief period from when I was about 15 to 19, so 4 years, where she was going to the meeting every single like Sunday. We had three a week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. We were going to all of them. We were going out door knocking, which we call field service, um, and doing all of the things, the conventions and assemblies. Um, but it was almost like it was never good enough for the witnesses. And I always felt like I was never good enough. I tried to get baptized when I was 16 and they told me no. I tried again when I was like 17, they said no. And then I tried at 19, and then that's when I got baptized, and fully threw myself into the religion, more so like as much as I could. And that was around the time that my mum started what they would call becoming spiritually weak. And she started missing meetings and became inactive and stopped going.
Mm. Do they just fellowship you for something like that, or is that considered just like a low-level violation?
Yeah, it's kind of low level. You just become inactive, and if you can sort of fade away, they won't really bother you. As long as you're not going out and like saying like, "Hey, I'm doing drugs and having sex and all of the things that are hard no's," you can pretty much get away with not going back, depending on how connected your family is and the congregation's circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned sort of the end of the world Armageddon stuff. I know there's some parallels to what we would have gone after in our theology and our perspective on the end times on eschatology. Of course, you probably heard a lot of the whole Left Behind stuff that we were all into. You know, he's coming back at any moment.
Yes.
The rapture. But it is very different for JWs. It isn't the same thing as just the Lord's coming back anytime to rapture his people to himself. Your Armageddon is very different. And could you help us? I've heard it explained before, but it's been a minute. But I would love to just hear, what is a typical JW's perspective, someone who's really educated enough to really know how to represent their beliefs? What do they think about is the future that's ahead of us? Because it seems like, from what I understand, there is like several places at which, even if you believe today and you're obedient, you're faithful, that you could still fall away, and that like you're pretty much until like the very, very end, you're just not safe. How did that look like it was going to play out to you?
So they preach that Armageddon can happen at any moment, but that there is going to be a sign, that there'll be something called the sign of peace and security, that the nations will call out and say everything's fine, no, there's no more wars, nothing's happening. And then that's when Jehovah will bring about Armageddon. And there are various things that happen. Like, they're very much big on I think it's in Matthew, the end times, the signs of the last days that they would
Right.
call it. You know, there's wars, there's pestilence, there's famine, there's this, that, and the other thing. Obviously, that's always happening all the time anyway. But the next big thing that happens, if there's like a volcano that erupts, oh, it's a sign of the times. And Trump getting elected, oh, that's a sign of Satan's world becoming stronger, and Jehovah's going to step in any minute now. And COVID was also a sign, and 9/11 was a sign, and it just can, like, anything can be a sign, really.
Isn't it amazing how they just do that? They do that nonstop, and both JWs, but also ours. The same thing. Yes. I remember when I was a teenager and the U.S. was first invading Iraq for Saddam Hussein, I think it was, or something. Maybe it was the one before that. But I remember the youth pastor that night, like it was a Wednesday night, and that night the youth pastor was preaching, and we had just like invaded like an hour earlier from the U.S. had invaded Iraq, and he's like, "This is it, guys." I'm like,
yeah,
you could say this about everything. I mean, there's got to be thousands of things that would have triggered the end times in that frame of mind.
Yep. It's constantly happening. And like, I mean, for myself, like, I was fully believing when COVID happened, and I was like, oh my goodness, because one of their biggest parts of their prediction was that the witnessing, the door knocking would stop. So that had to happen because of all the restrictions in place. So we're thinking, oh my goodness, like, we've stopped meeting together for the meetings, and we've stopped knocking on doors. Like, this is it, the end will come now. Like, oh. And then obviously it didn't, and then it became like all over Zoom, and they adapted. So
as they always do.
Yeah. As it happens.
Just curious, with evangelicals, I know a lot of people talked about how the COVID lockdown gave people pause to just step back and reflect, because it's like, it's so different. It's like, do I even need this? Because I feel quite healthy without church. You know, maybe I was already out by then, but maybe some people felt guilty, like I shouldn't feel so happy to be doing church by watching church on my TV at home. Like, what was the COVID environment like for you, still being a believer at that time?
So it was very scary because of that whole, I think the end of the world's happening right now. And at the same time, I was like, thank goodness, like I can just sit here and do a Zoom meeting and not have to turn my camera on, not have to be fully dressed up in my meeting clothes. But at the same time, you've got the guilt that like Jehovah knows, Jehovah's watching. So he knows if I'm wearing a skirt or if I'm wearing my pajamas. So I would wear my skirt and like bargain that wearing my slippers was okay because I was at home. um, but at the same time, like I was so fully invested and indoctrinated in this religion. I was so busy doing everything I could to prove myself worthy and that I was a good Jehovah's Witness that when COVID happened and New Zealand went into lockdown, I did finally have that pause. Like I stopped doing everything all the time and realized that, hey, I was okay to slow down. Like I don't have to be around people all the time. I don't have to be preaching or going to the meetings all the time, like to the same degree that I was. But because COVID gave me that time and space, it's definitely like I woke up as a result of COVID-19. And if COVID hadn't happened, I think I would still be a Jehovah's Witness to this day. Like it gave me the space and the time to free myself, I suppose.
Hmm. I think that was the dynamic that a lot of different religious groups had, and you could see why they were so very upset about it. I mean, a lot of groups in the U.S., at least, they literally just defied orders, and some of them, I'm sure, went to court and won. Some lost, but they were just like, screw it. Like we're God, our obligation to meet together to praise God supersedes anything else that this government can come up with, whether it's medical or not. And it was interesting though. You get the sense that they were really afraid, like that their people were going to be getting used to not coming to church and not filling up the basket with their tithe. Going back for 1 second, for the people that did still believe it, with the expectation of Armageddon, what do they think is going to happen? I know that's like the end times, but like who is it? Like everyone's just 100% of us are all going to die at that time, or is there like a remnant that gets saved, or is it like everyone dies but some people's spirits go to a special place?
So with the Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're a baptized Jehovah's Witness when Armageddon starts, theoretically you should be safe. So you'll keep living. Everyone else who is not a Jehovah's Witness, because up until this point you've kind of like had your chance, you've had your opportunity to become a witness and to be saved. At that point they'll all be destroyed because it's too late. And like that's a big thing that the witnesses teach, is like that they kind of almost have this like glee and like enjoying the feeling that the worldly people, so anyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness, will be turning around and being like, no, they were right and I was wrong, oh Jehovah, why? And be destroyed. So the active Jehovah's Witnesses who are baptized will then go through Armageddon and wake up or go through into the new system, which is Paradise Earth. So Jehovah will destroy all the wicked people. Satan will be thrown into an abyss for 1,000 years. The Jehovah's Witnesses would go on into Paradise Earth and live forever, basically. There is the belief of the 144,000, and they're the people that believe they're anointed to rule with Jesus in heaven. And so at that point, they'll all be up there in heaven, ruling with Jesus over the Paradise Earth. And I'm guessing Jehovah's just chilling at this point.
But no hell, the wicked and all that.
There's no hell.
They're not
They're all
burning
just
anywhere.
destroyed.
They're just gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
No second chances.
and is it true though that the people that made it to paradise who were good Jehovah's Witnesses, they're still at that point in danger that they could still fall away even in paradise?
So then we enter the 1,000-year reign, where Jesus will look after the earth and those anointed will be looking after the earth and the people on it. And Satan's in the abyss. And then after 1,000 years, Jesus is going to let Satan out, and he can then tempt all of these people who have now just made it through Armageddon and 1,000 years. will now be tempted again, and they could then be destroyed at that point. After that, should you make it through, you live forever on a paradise earth.
Did they ever explain why Jesus is letting Satan out one extra time? Is that just like we just want the cream
Just
of
to
the
make
crop?
sure. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy when you think about it. That if you've
Yeah.
been through a life of faithfulness and you've made it through Armageddon, you made it through 1,000 years of absolutely just adoring the fact that you are finally here, adoring your Savior and loving your life, only to be told you're going to basically get put through the torture yet again of the danger that you're about to get into of annihilation. It's kind of different in that annihilation's probably better than hell. Hell is like this forever burning. I think if I had to choose one, I would definitely choose, unless it was like a way out later. Like, yeah, you'll be in hell for 1,000 years, but then eventually you will get a chance, like the purgatory of the Catholic Church. You're going to burn for a while, but then you'll get there. You'll be good. It'll be worth it in the end. But if it's like, no, you're never getting out, which is what I believe, you're toast forever, literally on fire.
Yeah.
Then annihilation's better. So it's like, it's not quite as fearful, but it's weird that it's like that sense of, why are so many of these superhero movies? Why does the wicked villain always come back? You can put that guy in prison, you can even kill him and he somehow resurrects, but like you can't ever kill the bad guy, because if you did, the story just pretty much falls flat.
Yes.
It's like, did they ever explain to them what was the motivation for Jesus letting him out one more time?
So I've just realized it is because of all the people that were worldly and then got resurrected. So they'll be resurrected. Then the Jehovah's Witnesses that made it through Armageddon would study with them so that they could get to know Jehovah. And then, so they're basically, I guess, got 1,000 years to get right with God. And it's basically to tempt them and the Jehovah's Witnesses that made it through to see if they do still properly believe in Jehovah and his system.
It's interesting too that they're saying basically, or implying, that everyone lives a long time, like, back in the time of the Old Testament, those people that lived 900 years, it's like you're back to that kind of reference. And then but eventually everyone who survives the final one gets to like the final paradise, which is not heaven. That's heaven's for the 144,000 still. And then there's like a second paradise that's no more Satan, no more temptation.
Yeah. So basically just continuing to live on earth forever in paradise.
Well, that's quite an interesting system. And just to think too, though, that you're never really safe, it strikes me that they really keep you on the edge of your seat the entire time. Even if you make it to paradise, you're still like, you might be safe for today, but tomorrow is not promised. Whereas for us, that's a very key difference, where it's like, if you just make a profession and you didn't mean it, yeah, you're still going to be in trouble. But if you mean it, if you say, God, I understand, I am a sinner, you are the Savior, I bring nothing good to the table, I couldn't earn enough to ever get there, I am just wicked, and what I need most is for someone to literally take my place. And that's exactly what your son did. And by believing in his death and resurrection, my sin problem is covered, not because of anything good I have done or could ever do, but because everything good is in my place. It's like God's the judge with the gavel, and he says, I condemn you, but I'm now going to, just declare you worthy even while you're not. And someday when you're in heaven, I will actually transform you and make you worthy. But for now, I'm just going to legally, judicially declare you worthy. I don't see your sin anymore. I see Christ's righteousness covering you like a white garment.
Wow.
And so if you really believe that, it doesn't matter what happens in time and the future and Satan and all this, you could be a murderer or whatever. And it's like, if you truly are covered by the blood of Christ, you're covered. And that gets even more hyper when you're bringing Calvinism. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
So, if your name was written in the Lamb's Book of Life before time began, like, you literally are just like, he already picked you. It's like the decision's made. He picked you to make it. You're on the good. You're going to the good place. So it's crazy though that JWs, it's so opposite. Like, they want you to think like, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah. No, exactly. And it definitely comes back down to that whole fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. Like, they keep you in that to keep you a member, basically. They got to keep you afraid. They got to keep you feeling guilty in order to keep you feeling obligated to continue.
Yeah. Going back just a little bit to your earlier party story, what were some of the things that you directly heard or just picked up from the general culture of the church regarding gender roles and purity culture?
So definitely women were women, and they would often illustrate this by, okay, like it's such a massive topic with the witnesses. Um, so the men got to have all of the parts at the meetings. They get to lead the congregation, they lead the household, whatever the man says goes. Like if you're a wife, you have to listen to your husband. Any decision must go through your husband. And then within the congregation, there are the elders and the ministerial servants that all sort of, this ministerial servant, then elder, and those are the people you have to listen to, and then your husband, and then, within the family, the children still have to listen to their father. Women have no roles in the congregation apart from sitting there and answering. They do have a part on one of the midweek meetings where they can role play doing like a study with someone or knocking on the door, but they cannot teach or lead in the congregation. There's absolutely no same-sex marriage. A woman must marry a man, and you must marry a Jehovah's Witness. You can't marry someone outside the religion. They teach that homosexuality is a sin, an abomination, that Jehovah hates gay people. It's, yeah, the husband, whatever he wants when it comes to sex as well. Like if he wants to have sex, you have to give it to him. They also had rules up until this year that you're not allowed to do oral or anything backdoor within your marriage. Outside of marriage, no sex before marriage. And they're very much the whole general purity culture vibe, but like comp hit kind of, you can't do anything outside those lines.
What were the rules like about modesty? Was it, I'm assuming, pretty similar, like just very little skin, where you're
Yes,
being
you
tempting?
had to wear, like, you couldn't wear spaghetti straps. You had to keep your shoulders kind of covered for the most part. It had to be knee length or longer if you're wearing a skirt. Couldn't be tight fitting. Same for the guys as well. No tight suits. Nothing too flashy. Nothing to like draw the attention from God to you. Like you would be told that you're making a showy display if you wore something too crazy or out there. No crazy hair colors. So that's why I did pink as soon as I left.
Sounds very similar. Our modesty culture rules and expectations were very, very similar. It was very much the sense that yeah, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, and also you don't want to show too much skin in order to, make your brothers in Christ stumble, or however they would
Yes.
put it. But with all the background you mentioned there, with like the obligations where the wives would have to be available to their husbands no matter what, and just the general culture overall, even in non-sexual senses, did you hear of stories of abuse and things, whether it was between in a marriage or between from parents to kids, where there was clearly anything like this might technically be honoring Jehovah, but this sounds really, really toxic? Did you hear anything like that growing up?
Yes. Even within like my own situation with my mum, I remember going to another sister in the congregation and asking for her help. And it just got put back onto me that I need to be careful about what I say so as to not cause a reaction from my mum. I knew of some sisters that were being abused physically by their husbands, but they couldn't leave because you're not allowed to get a divorce and you can't leave your husband. They would have articles about how you would win your husband over without a word by showing the right like countenance and behavior, and then he'll see the error of his ways. So that happened a lot within my congregation growing up. There was a case of of CSA, where I knew one of my friends was the one that got abused by someone else, and I just knew that they got disfellowshipped. And I thought that it was just a one-off, like the offender, the abuser, got disfellowshipped. And I just thought that that was a one-off random thing that happened because he was a bad guy. And it wasn't until I left that I realized there was the two witness rule, which keeps abusers in the congregation, because if something happened and two people didn't see it, well, then no, it didn't happen. and it creates a toxic environment where it happens over and over again because they don't always get rid of the abusers.
Hmm. Did you ever get a sense that there were situations where they really should have just completely pushed it off to the police and just tried to keep it in house?
I know that happened again because later on I had a friend, this was not long before I left, who had a toddler, and she told me that an elder came to her and said that there are about 4 or 5 brothers in this congregation that she needs to keep her child away from, and they're going to go into that with her. And she was quite shocked, and I was quite shocked. Again, I don't know all of the details within that particular case and congregation, but that to me is something that these people shouldn't be around children. And why are you letting them? And why aren't you telling the whole congregation? Why are you only telling some people? It was just very scary. And then when I woke up and I learned about the massive CSA problem the witnesses have, it was eye-opening and horrendous. And that was, I would say, key to me publicly leaving, because I was like, I can't have my name attached to an organization that protects and enables abusers.
Mm. When you were able
Sorry.
to articulate what you just said to yourself and you're thinking through this is really bad, did it feel like you were just needing to go to a different Jehovah's Witnesses congregation or just leave the whole organization entirely?
So I guess with my waking up process, it happened quite suddenly all at once. Like, I always had a couple of little doubts that would kind of, alarm bells would go off, but I would think, no, it's okay. Jehovah will take care of it. I'll just wait till the new system. And that in particular was when it came to like the homophobia and the misogyny. I was often called a feminist, which was an insult in the witnesses. And I would think, like, why can't I do things? Like, I can do all of these things that these guys are doing. So can all of the other women in the congregation. Like, why do I have to have a man tell me what to do? But I would squash it down and think, okay, Jehovah will take care of it. But then in 2020, because I had all this time, I came across the XJW subreddit, and I basically clicked it, went through all of the examples that people were sharing about their experiences. And then I found jwfacts.com, which is an amazing website that a former witness created that has all of their old teachings. It clearly shows their flip-flopping doctrines and, where it's okay in one place, but not okay in another place to do something. And, just so many things that we were lied to about, and just going through that over the course of the weekend and seeing a YouTube video of one of the leaders saying that they've never said that they're God's one true channel on earth. I was like, this can't be. Like, that's what they've always said. Like, I don't understand. So my wake up and leaving, well, the leaving process took a couple of months, but the wake up was like pretty instant. So I didn't think about going to another Kingdom Hall or congregation. I was just like, I need to get out and I need to figure out how.
And is it correct though that before that time frame, all those sources and resources you could go to investigate and hear people's stories, that's all completely off limits to faithful JWs?
Yeah. I don't know why I just clicked it. I didn't even have a think about like, oh, I probably shouldn't click this. Like, if I did think that, I thought it so quickly and dismissed it that I just clicked the link and went to it. Yeah. But I guess that was my one naughty Jehovah's Witness thing.
Yeah. I'm just curious, going back for 1 second to something we were talking about before with the whole perspective on people's looking for like who's disobeying Jehovah and who's disobeying the leadership. Did it feel like there was a culture at all of like, I guess for lack of a better term, being tattletales? Like, I'm looking out for you, and if you have even a hint, like if I think you looked at a website, I'm telling the elder, like you're going to get it. Like I'm not going to give you the grace or the benefit of the doubt that maybe there's a good reason you did that or whatever. Even something as simple as you're wearing something that's a little too showy, and the elders didn't see it, but I'm going to make sure they know. Was like a tattletale environment, or did you personally have a different experience with that?
Yes, no, it was very tattletale. Very much you are taught to police other Jehovah's Witnesses. In particular, like I know it would happen to me, and I've also done it to a couple of other people, where like they would use a scripture. I think it's in Matthew. Like if you have something against your brother, go to them about it, and they'll kind of use that to sort of say, if you saw someone was wearing an outfit that was too tight or doing something wrong, you would go and talk to them. But that talk to them was to basically encourage them to go to the elders and tattle on themselves. I just like, it's insane. It's why you think everyone's always watching you all the time when you're a Jehovah's Witness, because you think Jehovah's watching you, your brothers and sisters are watching you, you're trying to watch yourself, and you're trying to watch them and make sure that they're not falling prey to Satan's world. So it's a very high anxiety situation.
I definitely, from the different interviews I've done with JWs, I definitely get that sense in it. I would say there's probably some kernel of that was in my experience, but nothing like the way I get the sense there. I mean, there was a lot of sense too with those passages that talk about your liberty in Christ. If you've been freed in Christ, don't let someone reshackle you. And one person believes you can eat meat sacrificed to idols, someone else says no. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just like let everyone be convinced in their own mind. And there was a real strong sense, I think, especially in the seeker sensitive environment, to like stop with the legalism. And it's funny, there's actually some interesting aspects of legalism that come up in specifically non-legalistic seeker sensitive churches. It's like a backwards, they kind of passive aggressively stick the legalism in there, but it just sounds like it's kind of scary where like if you did have even a shadow of a doubt, or you did something that was like loose with the moral standards, like you better keep it to yourself and hide it. I mean, it really, I think this is going to segue this to the other question about sexual assaults and so forth, is that it seems like it would lead you naturally to a double life where you're like, I have to protect, yes, the truth of Yahweh and the church, but I have to protect my image, because if I'm, leading the service or reading the scripture and all of a sudden they think I'm being somehow less of an example than I should be for Christ, for Jehovah, then like I'm going to end up getting kicked off the worship team or something. Therefore, I have to. And I saw that. I went to Bible college to be a pastor, and it always struck me. And I've said this a number of times over the years. I haven't said it in a while, I think, but these guys, like we used to call preacher boys. The guys that are looking to be pastors of a church. In many cases, looking to be pastors of a church within like 2, 3, 4 years from graduation, pretty quickly. So you're talking about guys that are like 24, 25. Of course, their hormones are off the charts. They can't wait to have sex once a day and twice on Sundays. But because they're not married yet, they're doing all kinds of porn. But of course, porn is that's like the devil's workshop. So, and masturbation like crazy. And it was just like you'd get together with these guys, and it was like a hidden, understood rule. Like when it's just us guys, we're going to be free to be honest. Let's all hiding aside. And that's where I say it was a little different, where we could truly be honest in many of these contexts. But the guys would be honest, like, I'm struggling so much. Struggling is just another key word for I masturbated again. But or I'm taking a girl's clothes off in my mind. But that's like when you realize that these are the guys that are going to be the pastors of churches that have 2, 3, 4, 500 people or more. And it's like, if those people that are about to hire you as their pastor knew what you're confessing in these groups, they'd be like, hell no, like you sound creepy or scary or whatever. You sound like you're not really committed to the Lord or to fighting sin. Like, what's wrong with you? But that is going to be your pastor. That is your pastor. But that's where when you start to, deconvert, deconstruct, you start to hear these stories of Pastor so-and-so got picked up by the police because he was doing something naughty. And, it's like all this stuff. And you mentioned before, like it's described almost as like it's like a one-off, like that one person is the one person that's got a problem, but no, everyone else is just fine. And they don't seem to connect the dots. But like your system is generating predators, but it's not just that it's generating predators. It's also that you are truly suppressing people's sexuality. And just like in the Roman Catholic Church, with the priests and the altar boys, like this repression is going to come out one way or another eventually. And like, you got to step back and say, there's something wrong here. And did you get the sense as you were deconstructing that part of the issues that they have were that you're just like, you're just in a powder keg here with all this craziness.
Yeah, definitely, because they have a lot of articles or literature about like how you shouldn't masturbate and like how you what you can and can't do, you know, like I said, when you're married. They even, if you went to go to Bethel, which is like their headquarters, they have their world headquarters in the States, and then they have Bethels that sort of look after other countries or areas and territories. If you go to Bethel, you will be shown a video about not masturbating. There's one for women and one for the men. And I think it's popped up on a couple of XJW channels recently. About, they even talk about like not having sex with your pillow, like to mimic, masturbation and sex. And it's just like all of that, you're already putting that into someone's mind before they enter it. Then obviously all the men have to stay with the men and all the women have to stay with the women, or generally they go as a married couple, but there's a lot of single men there and they have a problem with homosexuality within their world headquarters, because of the environment that they set up. But it was definitely very taboo. Like we weren't allowed to talk about sex. And you just wouldn't, like with other women that I was friends with or other sisters in the congregation. If you even asked like, oh, what was it like on your wedding night or something, it would be like, no, we can't talk about that. So you wouldn't know. And I mean, I don't know how it is for the guys or how it was for the guys if they did sit around and talk about what they were struggling with, but I get the feeling that it probably wasn't that common. But there clearly was a problem with masturbation and all of the things that they keep putting articles out about, because why would they need to otherwise?
Yeah. Does that create an issue too in the JWs? I know it does for my background, but an issue where a lot of people end up getting married far too soon, just purely because they're so horny, and it's just like,
yeah,
I want to stay pure, and therefore let's get married at 18 so that we can kind of honor God with our bodies. But it's like you don't really know the person, like
yeah,
you're just like, you're doing it for the sake, you might have everyone's blessing, but like you don't actually know that person, and obviously people can get mismatched pretty badly in those
yep.
kind of contexts. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that a lot. A lot of people got married at like 18, 19. And then it was really sad because you can't get divorced. So you're kind of stuck in these situations. And then like for myself, I didn't get married. So there I was like waking up at 35, I think I was. And I had never had sex. And then I've got to now like leave this religion and then figure out how to be a normal human being in the world. And then also on top of that, figure out the whole sex thing, because I wasn't really allowed to learn about any of it in the first place. It puts people in situations that are very unnatural. Like you should be able to explore your sexuality when you're younger. Just, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I did I was working on several books when I was a Christian, and didn't end up getting most of them published. But it's interesting. I'm kind of glad I didn't now, obviously. But I had a book on worldview I was working on. I had another book on prayer book, literally just a book of prayers. But I had another book I was working on for a long time. It was about the body and about sexuality. And I remember some of the things that I would research and study. And I remember one time it literally just hit me, like it just, like a ton of, like a big wave of water just hit me, where I was like, oh my gosh, like I am beginning through my research and just my transforming my own mind, as it were. I'm beginning to see the body differently. And what it triggered it was, I was actually at a very conservative school. It's called Bob Jones University. I don't think JWs would have known about it, but in the evangelical world, it's like ultra conservative. Guys back then had to wear ties 90% of the time, and girls wear skirts down to their ankles. You never touch a girl. You aren't seen with a girl after dark ever. That kind of thing. Very, very strict. But they have an art gallery there, a huge art gallery that's for Western religious art. It is second in value in the whole world, only to the Vatican.
Wow.
And so it's huge. And I got to work there. I was guarding Rembrandts and other Baroque paintings. But I remember at one point I was in one of the galleries I had to guard, and it had these old paintings, but some of them had the women like topless. And of course, it's not like porn. It's like, it's part of a whole picture of like some, the fall of Rome or something. And it's something that was very, very elegant in the painting, but there's technically a topless woman in there. And it wasn't like portraits where it's just a topless woman, but she's part of the whole painting. And I remember going to the curator of the museum at one point, just not in an arrogant, accusatory sense, just saying, I just want to understand, like, why do we let that in our gallery? I understand it's an elegant Baroque painting that's probably worth, a lot of money, but that's technically a topless woman. And it really struck me that they were actually very opposed to my perspective at the time, which was that was immodest. Like, that's just art. That belongs here. That's just a beautiful art. We should be able to look at a beautiful art, sort of like fine art nudity, if you will, that's truly elegant. And I'm sure they would have said it's in part because it's Baroque. This was so long ago that they made it, and so much more about the art and the painting and the technicalities of it. But it began this series of thoughts for me, like, well, when is nudity okay? And ended up having several other experiences in life where that question just came up over and over. And at one point, I was realizing by this research, like, that I am changing, where I can, for the first time, look at a female body, and I'm not thinking anymore about the lustful side of it. I mean, yeah, I can always go there if I want to, but I'm just thinking of it as purely, this is just a beautiful work of art. I remember when I was doing a new missions trip to Papua New Guinea, and all the other people that were with me were pretty much Westerners, mostly from America, some from the UK, some from New Zealand and Australia. But it was all people from a similar enough culture that nudity was not acceptable. And there in New Guinea, we'd be walking through the tribes and so forth. We'd see women gardening who were topless. And of course, the girls on our mission trip were always looking at the guys to see if we were staring. But it was obvious that there was like this taboo about it. But eventually it hit me, like, I am changing. And I changed enough to say, oh my God, like, what are we doing to ourselves that we can't just look at a beautiful body and say, it's just beautiful, and not think I have to associate this with if I see a naked woman, I just instantly have to rape her or something. Like, that's not where these thoughts have to go. And I almost like just dropped to my knees thinking, what are we doing to ourselves as Christians that we cannot celebrate the body? And I obviously went much further than that eventually with my thought process in it, but it was really transformative. And I feel so bad for people that never get a chance to like truly say to themselves, I know what eroticism is, and it's a beautiful thing, or I know what the beauty of the body is, and I fully let myself enjoy it. I think even as deconstructed people, we often have that. And I've had some conversations with people like Darrell Ray about whether porn is ever acceptable. And it's interesting, but you learn to realize that there's so many roots of this that you have to pull up, of like how you have been so deeply shamed,
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know that the Jehovah's Witnesses teach, when it comes to like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, that they were naked and then they became ashamed once they had sinned. So it was like, I would always think in the new system, when we get the earth back to the paradise conditions and we're all originally how we were supposed to be, are we going to be naked? And, but all of their pictures where they depict the new system and the new world, everyone's wearing corporate J-Dub American business style outfits.
Of course.
And I'm like, well, wouldn't we all be naked again if that's what God intended and that's what you recognize from the Bible and portray? Wouldn't we be?
Yeah, clothing was part of the curse. So if the curse was reversed, then yeah, I think so.
But it's definitely like, once you start, obviously deconstructing the Jehovah's Witnesses and then Christianity and then religion as a whole, there's so much more to dismantle than just like the religion side of it. There's the patriarchy, there's the racism. The world that we live in at the moment is so screwed up, and religion sort of helps push it in that direction and not make it better. So, or sort of like helps. It all goes hand in hand, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And there's so much to deconstruct and dismantle, not just like this one little cult, the Jehovah's Witnesses. So sort of like leaving and unlearning thought processes and, modesty, which is what we've just been talking about, like wearing a boob tube instead of just a t-shirt or something like that. And feeling like that's a big deal is just so ridiculous, when we all have bodies and they can be beautiful, they are beautiful, or they don't even have to be like, you don't have to be walking around thinking you're going to be perceived, basically. Like just sort of taking that away and just looking at it biologically, like we're fine, we should be fine. My body gets me from A to B. It's helped me leave a cult. Like, let it be.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
amazing too that there's a lot of religions around us that are even crazily enough more hyper. I remember Netflix had a while ago they were doing a whole bunch of series about like Hasidic Jews and the ultra conservative Jews, and I'm sure a lot of Muslims would probably be like this, but like they actually had a quote unquote like sex scene in one of these, and they were like, I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I think it probably was, where like they basically were clothed apart from like the very few neat clothes you had to move aside to technically have sex. Like they were clothed in bed, and it was like get it done almost fully clothed as quick as you can, and that's it. And I just
Yeah.
thought, my goodness, like at what point do you just sit there and think? I mean, plus too, just as a human that wants to just enjoy your humanness and just and love life, like at what point do those kind of people get to just like, does a man get to enjoy his wife's body and just say, treat her like a goddess, just enjoy her beauty and soak her up and adore her and cuddle her? It's like, no, it's like we're so anti-body when we're in religion. And I love how so many of us are admitting, not just in the terms of sexuality, but a lot of aspects of it, like we're just not embodied when we're in religion. Like we have to get in touch
Yeah.
with ourselves in every level. And for so many of us, it's like we're relearning to listen to our bodies as if almost like as if we're two different people. Like there's a mental part of us that says, I know religion's wrong, I'm leaving. But it's like your body's still stuck in it in some ways, you have to kind of pull it back and to catch up.
Yep, definitely.
So with your journey, when you got to the point where you could identify that there were clear issues with JWs, did other forms of Christianity appeal to you as a possible alternative?
So I had like a brief week where I was like considering all of the different options and got a wee bit terrified that what if it is like the Catholic burning hell? Like, what if that's what's real? But I basically decided to at that point worry about all of this. Like I know for a fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are completely man-made and I don't want to be part of this cult anymore. When it comes to the other religions, I can't see myself joining something else that follows or worships the God of the Bible because I don't see any love there. Because as a whole, the way it's sold and put out there is very restrictive and not loving. So I don't want to be a part of it. I just want to live like a kind, fun life. And if there is a God out there, whoever it is, whatever it is, if there's not, it's fine. Like I should be able to enjoy myself and my time on the earth now. And if there is someone like just and loving, then they wouldn't care. Like I just feel like it's just ridiculous to be sitting there worrying about whether or not you're wearing the correct length of skirt when we're all made the same. Like we're saying, like we're talking about bodies. Like what was the point of covering everything up like this and being so pedantic?
Yeah. Now, did you
Yeah.
ever have any friends though that did leave JWs but become a Christian? And did you have any conversations where they tried to pull you into like evangelicalism or Catholicism or Mormonism or whatever?
So there is within the ex-JW community, because of I guess the time that I woke up, there is a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't want to say a lot. There's a percentage of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are very MAGA, and into like Trump and all of that. And then they are usually hand in hand with the evangelical ones, like the ex-witnesses that still remained Christian or just think that the witnesses got a little bit wrong, but they still want to follow Jesus. It's very hard to have a conversation with them without it feeling like they're trying to save you. Um, I do, I help run an ex Jehovah's Witness meetup here in London.
That's awesome.
One of the other people that help run it, she is evangelical. And I guess we're sort of there to balance it out. I guess my boyfriend and I both help. And we're both atheists. So it's kind of like a nice balance, because I do think if you leave a cult, or if you leave whatever you've left, if you find a religion that's right for you, that's great. If you find something that works for you, you're not harming anyone else, cool, whatever, do what you like. Like, hopefully you'll fully deconstruct at some point, but I'm not going to stop you. But I also don't want people who are victims of religious trauma to be coming into contact with someone that's going to be like, hey, they just had the wrong Jesus, so come look at this one, you know. But
Yeah,
it's all about balance.
which would have been certainly the messaging my groups would have said, that yes, please leave
Yeah.
JWs, they're a cult, but we're not a cult. It's crazy. You can't see it till you can see it, and then you can't unsee it. When you did finally deconvert, like, just what was it? Was it a day, a week? Like, what was it like the first time you said to yourself, "I am fully out, and I'm, either an atheist or real close to, like, I'm gone. That is no longer an option. There might be other things I need to explore, but that is definitely false. It's a false worldview." What was it like the moment that hit you, and then just the first few days and weeks after that?
I feel like that in particular was very freeing. I was like, I can now figure out who I am and do whatever I like, and figure out life now. And instead of having to sit there and be like, I know everything and I have all the answers, and I need to be told all the answers. I'm quite happy sitting in not knowing, because ultimately at the end of the day, none of us know, but I can't see any evidence of a loving God, so I choose not to worship him. Like, I choose to just live for myself, live freely, and not worry about all of this.
Mm.
So it took me, I would say, 4 months. I think I had to, because when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't just leave and close the door and say bye. Like, in reality, you can't. I tried to fade out of the religion over the course of about 4 months, which is where you gradually stop going to the meetings. And it was great because it was in the time of COVID. So I could just like turn on the Zoom meeting and pretend I'm there, but have the camera off, the microphone off, and I was watching Buffy in the background, something I wasn't allowed to watch when I was younger. um, and then just sort of like gradually stop going to the meetings, and you can fade out and live your life. But it's still quite difficult within this like Instagram world. I wanted to be free to post stuff on my account without having people go like, oh, why do you have tattoos? Why do you have pink hair? Why do you have a nose piercing? Um, or like, why have you removed me from Instagram if I chose to go that route? So I was trying to figure that out. And then, because I wanted to keep my friends basically in a way, like I didn't want to be completely shunned, disfellowshipped and shunned. Um, and so I'm trying to figure this out. I didn't think that I'd be okay on my own, but then like going through COVID had taught me that I am okay on my own. Like, I enjoy my company and I have fun no matter what I do.
Once they find out they're not supposed to talk to you anymore, is that right?
Exactly. So I had to be careful not to speak of my doubts. I stopped getting invited to some things, and then I was invited to and then uninvited to a couple of close friends, I think, engagement party. And at that point, I was like, what am I hanging on for? Like, these people don't actually care about me. And I'm tying myself up in knots, like worrying and worrying for no reason. So that night, I sort of put together a couple of paragraphs, um, and attached Stephen Hassan's bite model as well, and ticked off the aspects that the witnesses, tick off, and put that in my stories on Instagram, on my WhatsApp status. So everyone in my congregation saw it. Everyone knew where I stood, and I lost everyone overnight pretty much. So it was kind of traumatic in a way, but I feel like I've told my story so many times. I'm just like, blah, 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 this happened. Um, but I got so many messages from my friends saying, be careful out there. I'm not talking to you unless you come back to the meetings, unless you come back to Jehovah. You have to come back to Jehovah. You'll be destroyed otherwise, like blah, 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 all of these really awful messages. But after putting that out there in my stories and WhatsApp status, and knowing that everyone saw it, I was like, I'm free. I can literally do what I want now and nobody cares.
Mm.
So yeah.
It is really crazy the level of shunning when you're disfellowshipped. I know that we can on my side experience it to some extent, but it's more practical as opposed to mandated. People just don't
Mm,
feel as close to you, but they're allowed to be, and if they can go bowling with you or go out for pizza,
mm.
and it's seen almost like as like a I know you've fallen away, but I need to do my best to little like I
To
need to
bring you back.
bring you back,
Yeah.
and but whereas in JWs, it's like those people are considered too threatening, I guess, where it's like too much and we don't want to hear it, so we'd rather
Well,
very good.
there's kind of levels to it, sorry. Because what I did was unofficially disassociate myself. So I haven't been disfellowshipped, which is, if they find out you've had sex or been drinking too much or done drugs or whatever sin they decide to level against you, they kick you out and they will announce it from the platform at the meeting and say, such and such is no longer a Jehovah's Witness. Or you can disassociate yourself officially, which is where you write a letter to your congregation elders and say, hey, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, take my name off it. And then they still say the exact same announcement, such and such is no longer a Jehovah's Witness. This to me, just as a side point, is very sneaky because they're not allowing people in the congregation or their members to know that there are people that are voluntarily leaving. It just gives a big stigma of like, oh, you've been kicked out and you've obviously sinned. Um, but because what I did was get ahead of that narrative and say exactly how I felt, exactly what I was doing. That was very important to me. Like I didn't want to be disfellowshipped without having my voice heard. So I was like, they can't spin it any other way. They can't say that I left because I wanted to do this, that, or the other thing. It's because it's not the one true religion and I don't believe in it anymore.
Mm. Have you ever gotten the sense that anybody has sort of listened to your journey and sort of followed you out? Have you seen anybody reach out and say, "Yeah, I was praying for you to come
Yes.
out, and now I'm out too."
So because of my TikToks, I do get a bit more reach, and I suppose there are people in New Zealand that I actually didn't meet while I was the witness, but they now know of my page. And I've met someone in London who has a friend back in New Zealand who used to send my videos to them, and they were like, "Oh no, that's apostate, like that's she's lying, blah blah blah." But now they've met me and they're like, I used to see your videos and be like, no, you're lying, blah, blah, blah. But I actually know that it's not a lie and that you have researched your way out. I had someone leave the congregation that I was in when I left. He was an elder, him and his wife both left. Not directly because of me, but there was a little bit of crossover. And he was also able to tell me that I hadn't been disfellowshipped since leaving. Um, so that was good to know. But they officially disassociated and are now living like their true best lives. Because that's
Awesome.
a thing that the witnesses say that they have the best life ever. It's like a hashtag. If you see any witnesses on social media, they'll be hashtagging best life ever. Um, but yeah, it's really good. Like there is this nice big ex Jehovah's Witness community where you can connect with people that maybe you used to know or you know, are in cities and towns or countries where you used to be a witness and, you can go over the similarities and make connections and stuff. But yeah, it is interesting. I've heard from my ex-boyfriend's brother-in-law that there was a rumor going around that I left because I was a lesbian. And I was like, well, that's not true. To nobody read the thing that I specifically put out.
Mm.
But yeah. And even if I had, so what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is so cool to sort of go back in your mind sometimes to think about what it was like when you were stuck in it and now you're free, and it's interesting to try to imagine what people that are still stuck in it are thinking, and you can't help but feel bad. I had that exact
Mm.
experience happen when I deconverted in 2019,
Okay.
end of September 2019. 10 years earlier, literally, I had this friend that I had grown up with, a girl named Susan. I'd grown up with her since kindergarten in Christian school. I mean, we were like the top of the class. We were the goody two shoes. We were the ones that knew all the Bible verses and got all the green stars or whatever, gold stars. And we knew all the Bible answers. and her dad was a Christian school teacher there, and my dad was as well. And so it was just like we were just the top of the class and clear examples of what it means to be a Christian.
Mm.
And someone reached out to me out of the blue and said, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Susan?" I was like, "No, what?" I was thinking they're going to say she passed away or something. I was like, no, she's not a Christian anymore. Like, no, there's not Susan. I know Susan. We were Bible quizzers together. We memorized thousands of verses together. She was a great person. Like, no, something changed. So I reached out to her by email, and I was able to get an answer back from her. And it was clear, like, she was in a completely different headspace. She was like, patriarchy this, mythology that, toxicity this. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Christianity is none of those things. And unfortunately, I behaved myself when I did not say anything mean to her. I was very polite. I'm glad I was. We just kind of ended it as like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't see it that way. But we ended it on a friendly note. Literally 10 years later, I reached out to her. I pulled up the same email thread and I was like, I got to tell you something. I see it now. I see it for the first time. I see it. I was like, you're completely right. But it took me 10 years from that to actually deconvert, which is crazy to think about. 10 years. I could
You
have
know
deconverted
what?
10 years earlier.
I had something very similar, where 10 years before I woke up. And also quite funny. So it was obviously 2020 when I woke up. But it was the end of September, beginning of November as well. And then 10 years prior, I had come across ex-Jehovah's Witness support group on Facebook. And I was like, oh, okay, what are they talking about? And I kind of interacted a little bit, but I still fully believed in it, in the Jehovah's Witness religion, and came across someone, like a page that was very, because there is a subset of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are very conspiratorial minded as well. And this website was like that, and it scared me back into it. So that's also why, like, when I do what I do, I make sure everything is fact-based and evidence up the wazoo, like, because I'm like, I don't want anyone to find my content and be like, oh, that's scary and lies and like made up nonsensical stuff and like be pushed back into the religion. Because like I think about that too. I'm like, 10 years ago, 10 years earlier, I could have left. I could have been living my life for 10 more years prior. It's not fair. Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah, it was quite funny.
Exactly. By the way, if anyone is curious about that person I mentioned, Susan, I did eventually interview her. One of the most intense, tearful interviews I've ever done.
Oh,
Literally, I cried a lot preparing for it, and I cried a lot after it happened. I cried a lot editing it. But a very intense and very real interview. I'll put the link for that with this video if anyone wants to check that out with Susan. But can I ask, going back to your story, when you finally did deconvert, at that point you're obviously dealing with the stress of it all and the disfellowshipping kind of stuff, the shunning. But at the same time, you're looking forward. It sounds like you did a pretty good job. It sounds like of just like saying, "This is it. Like this is my line in the sand. I've got a new life, and I'm proud of it. Let's do it." But at that point, you're sort of reclaiming your identity and saying, "Who am I without all this garbage? And where do I go from here?" What were some of the big ideas that you were working through to just sort of figure out who you were, who maybe had been this whole time but hid it, or just at least who
yeah.
you wanted to be from this point on?
Well, I sort of like having that space and like freedom. Um, I came to realize that I was bisexual, and so I came out as bi. And just like even being able to acknowledge that, that's something that like I was never allowed to think about. I had to marry a man, and I had to have this like very cookie cutter Jehovah's Witness existence. Yeah, it's very freeing to have the time and energy to, well, not even energy, because it was very, very, it was a very traumatizing process, I suppose. Well, not traumatizing, but like a very intense process to figure out who you are outside of this religion or any religion, because joining or being born into it when you're a child, it becomes your whole life. You don't know anything beforehand. So it's a big process of sort of connecting with your inner child, I guess, and finding the things that made you happy as a kid, and sort of going back to that. I like to think of it that my life was now like a blank canvas, and I could start throwing the paint on it. And if I didn't like something, I didn't need to keep doing it. I could just be like, hey, I don't like that. It's just a redirection. It's not like a mistake. You can just continue on living and find happiness wherever.
Yeah. With the, you mentioned bisexuality and so forth, did you feel like as you were beginning to just think through it and have different experiences that you were able to really get more re-embodied, like we talked about, and just that you're able to just embrace every aspect of yourself and just enjoy being human and sort of safe in your own skin again?
Yes, I ended up making a couple of really good non-Jehovah's Witness, never been friends. And they were really supportive and encouraging in like my journey to find my sexuality, to figure out if I wanted to have sex and who with, and they gave me like tips and we're like, we're here for you for whatever you need. Whatever you don't know, you can ask us questions. Um, and just like going from nothing to then eventually having sex was just insane. And then from there, like when I traveled to London and I was going through the States on my way here, like an opportunity came up to be involved in an orgy. And like it was just a really freeing weekend where I didn't have to worry about anything. Like I felt very connected to my body and figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like. And it was a great experience, but I also I've realized from that I probably wouldn't want to do that again, but it was a great time when it happened. So
Right. That's
yeah,
awesome.
sorry, I just dropped that in there.
Yeah, that's. I mean, in some ways, I think there's some people for whom that would never be an option, but for some people, I think part of their healing would be just literally
Mm.
having experiences like that or whatever they feel like is going to really give them a chance to just explore themselves and they're even in their own minds, even if it's just like giving yourself the freedom to fantasize. I mean, for some people, even post deconversion, fantasizing is like a big no-no. And it's amazing just figuring out what are the shackles that have imprisoned my mind. And just I think honestly, I don't know if you would feel this way, but to realize that we not just don't have a God, but we evolved from animals. Like
Mm.
we're conscious, heavily conscious animals, and yeah, we are very different from them, but we're still animals. And like there's a passion of the red bloodedness in us that's like at some point you got to embrace your sexuality and just really figure out, unless you're just really okay with just like that, just I don't mind that being on the periphery of my life. But I mean, if you really want to live your life, you have to
Mm.
do something to heal that part of your life, and eventually it's going to come down to actual experiences. But in light of the word healing, just broadening out to any kind of healing, what are some of the things that you would say, even years removed from your deconversion, like would you say that there's things that you're still pulling up the weeds and pulling out the roots of things that just like, man, I thought I healed from that, but man, it's like I'm still struggling with this or that emotion or feeling.
I think there are there are ways that my body reacts to things that I didn't really realize it would, like that's still held on to beliefs or what was imposed on me, I suppose, and that I'm only still undoing this as experiences happen. Um, like I found the whole experience of like, having sex and the orgy thing. Like I know you weren't just talking about this, but I found that quite freeing in the moment. But when it comes to my everyday life, it's a little bit different. Like I still come up with little hurdles every now and then when I'm like, oh, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Should I be having more sex or less? Or like am I doing, like I think it's coming down to the overall theme of like, am I doing the right thing or am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And it's like a big perfectionism syndrome, I guess, that I'm trying to still undo. And that's manifesting at the moment when it comes to like sexual stuff, because I'm thinking like, oh, am I being bisexual enough? And I'm like, I don't need to think like that. It's just these little thoughts that pop up every now and then because it's a product of the indoctrination, I suppose. Like,
Mm. One thing that's really helped me a lot with my healing, and this is not as specific, it's more generic or vague, but I feel like one of the things that I'm catching up on is just the fact that science is so amazing in the sense of like the science of the universe and of I'm as much as it's sort of blowing my mind and I'm not sure I follow it all, but it's learning about quantum mechanics, learning about things like time dilation, that if you were to travel at the speed of light or close to it, time slows down. So it might be 100 years for you, but it's like 1,000 years for or 1,000,000 years for people back on Earth. And just you get to a point where you're thinking, I am part of something that's so big. And here I am stuck on these little teeny things of like, like the JWs, like, you like, don't have sex this way and that way. Like, are you kidding me? Like, like your God is so small. The universe is so big, and it's literally getting bigger. We know almost nothing about almost anything, but the little that we do know tells us we're like smaller than ants in the cosmic picture, and our lives are like a blip on the radar of not eternity, but of the age of the earth and of the universe that we know of. And it's like we waste so much of our time not. I know it sounds kind of woo-woo to just say stuff like, "Oh, you're made of stardust," but it is true. We are made of stardust, and there is something amazing about the fact that we even made it to existence. And sometimes I think it really hits me that like so much of our lives we have to do certain things to like survive that are going to not be thriving. Like you're going to have to go to work, you're going to have to change the oil in your car, you're going to have to whatever, you're going to have to spend some time in bed when you're sick. Like you're going to have to do certain things that are not going to be like you're just dancing and celebrating your life. But for the other parts of your life where you truly have a choice, I feel like asking people, like, do you at some point not want to say to yourself, have you ever really lived your life? Not necessarily sexually, but just like in the sense of delighting in yourself and delighting in your journey and thinking, I am part of something that's amazing that I cannot really understand and probably never will. But little I do know, this is a freaking cool experience. And this is a cool universe. It's so beautiful. And I'm actually part of it. And I feel like so many of us, if we could get that perspective just for a second, we would realize we have wasted and continue to waste so much of our lives when it's a beautiful dance, but it's a very short one. It's like, do you really want to waste your time? And also, of course, to then, as much as we were as Christians, we were focused on giving our lives away in servanthood to other people and ministering. But in the same sense, like you can still spend your life in a sense giving away to help other people. But how are you going to do that? Are you going to really leave the planet better than you found it and leave your kids better for the planet than they were before? And to say we have a chance here to truly free minds. And like I love the fact that when I work to free minds, and when I'm not working, I'm trying to free my own mind or continue that freedom and just to learn how to dance. And in some ways I feel like I dance more than I've ever danced before. But in other ways I'm like, you're still in your baby steps. You don't know how to dance yet. Like figure it out. This healing is an invitation and it's a process. So, enjoy it and get to it. Like, are there things where you feel like you're sort of learning to dance better, more than you've ever danced before, metaphorically?
I think, when you leave the constraints of like a religion like this, it's all very overwhelming because you have to like relearn so many things and learn things for the first time. Like politics, Jehovah's Witnesses, you're not allowed to vote, you're not allowed to be involved politically. So, I had to try and figure out New Zealand politics, and then now I've moved to the UK. I'm trying to figure that out now. Obviously the world is all eyes on America at the moment, and what's going on there. And I just don't understand why feeling that people should all be taken care of is such a big deal for other people, and that it becomes such a political aspect that's focused on and contested and fought against. Like, why are we sitting here like fighting these wars or doing these things? Like, why can't we just all literally, and I suppose it's also very naive and Jehovah's Witness leftover mindset of me is like, why can't we all just get along and like live happily? Like, this is insane. But I am still learning, and I try to give myself grace when it comes to that, because I'm never going to get anything 100% right straight away. I don't think anyone is. So yeah, politics, when it comes to like science and all of the different aspects of like evolution and like what we can learn about the human mind, I'm trying to absorb everything I can at the moment. So I feel like that it's constant. Like I'm constantly learning. I'm also trying to be more involved with like cult awareness and try and figure out how I can pursue university at some point and sort of study cults and like cult awareness and like stop these things from happening. I also I volunteer with Faith the Faithless here in the UK. And I want to open myself up to more opportunities with them. And just for me, that is me giving back and trying to leave the world in a better place than where it was when I started. but I'm also like, I love dogs. Like I said, in my career since leaving the witnesses as well is dog grooming. And I want to educate as many people as I can about how to take care of the dogs properly so that poor animals aren't always being neglected or not taken care of properly. Um, and I just, I feel like there's so much to learn, so much to do, and just, I also love art. Like, so I want to get more into like my painting and drawing and creating art and getting into a creative headspace. But I also think you're right. Like, why do we have to go to work, pay rent, change oil in our car? Why do we have to do all of these little things? Like when literally we could just be chilling at the beach or on a farm or climbing a mountain, doing whatever we want, but we've decided for some reason to make ourselves pay taxes. Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. There's a lot of learning going on at the moment. I'm still going.
Yeah. Society's definitely, we're definitely in our growing pain stage for sure. Just curious, as you look back at what you've been through, do you ever get bitter or angry or just want to scream at it all?
I feel like I get annoyed, like every now and then, like I'm like, or frustrated, I suppose, that like, why didn't I wake up earlier? Why couldn't I have, realized I was in a cult when I was in my 20s instead of my 30s? Even better still, like, why did my mom have to join? But I also feel like there's no point dwelling on that, and instead just try to live for now. I feel like there's no point in being angry. And I recognize though that anger is one of the human emotions. It's part of being a human. So if I do feel those feelings, I try to look at it, examine it, and be like, okay, what am I angry about? What's upsetting me? And how can we move forward from this? But yeah, I feel like overall, like it's an accusation that's leveled at any ex-Jehovah's Witness that speaks out against the religion. Why are you so bitter? Why are you so angry? And I'm like, I'm not. I just please tell me where the hate is in my page because it's not hateful. I'm talking about your beliefs and telling you about them and warning other people. Like there's no hate here. Um, so yeah, I don't really have room in my life to be bitter, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a point when you realize that that the messaging does psychologically abuse children. That sort of like we would have said when we were Christians, love the sinner, hate the sin. It's like I can love the Christian, but I hate the Christian message pretty intensely because
Yeah.
you all are literally abusing children physically as well as psychologically, and then justifying it and insisting that they pass it on to their kids when it's their turn. And I think there's some good reasons to be a little bit pissed off at it, but I agree. There's also a time and a place for that, and they're obviously not going to listen to us if we're just mean all the time. I will admit your channel, you do bring in some snark sometimes, and I really appreciate that. There's definitely a place for sarcasm and snark, and I definitely I want to get to your channel in minutes. Maybe I'll put a pin in that. But since we're talking about your story, can I maybe bring us towards a close with some questions about how you would advise someone else that's going through the hard parts of it when you got to a point where you knew you couldn't go back, but you also felt like it was just if you go forward, it's going to be really, really sad or difficult or painful. People are going to write you off, and you're not going to know what life's about. You have all the answers now, and you're about to throw them away. That's a pretty hard place, pretty dark place for a lot of people, and a lot of people get scared. And then honestly, some people I see they literally go back. I've had people I've interviewed who said, "I know this is mythology," and people that have literally gone back after they confessed it publicly. I said, I know this. I know that Christianity is not real. This is mythology. It's copied from other Greco-Roman mystery cults. And a year later, I found out they returned to Christianity.
Wow.
It's a very dark place, very scary. For anyone that's going through that doesn't see the grounding and the starting over and the new community that is waiting for them, perhaps 6, 12 months, a year or two later, what do you say to someone that's just like, I'm in a bad spot?
I think definitely the biggest thing is to start building yourself up so that you can trust in yourself and know that you will figure it out for yourself. You'll get through it. It's very difficult to just say that and hear it and actually take it in. But it's one of the biggest things that will help you is trusting in yourself that even if you make a decision and it doesn't work for you, you will figure out what does work for you. And there's no problem with changing direction, changing a life course. but just do it. Like start moving, start living for you, and you will find community along the way, because that's basically all religion is a community. You can find another community outside of it, whether it's a hobby, or something else. It's just about putting your feet in motion and start going, start stepping. It's extremely hard, but it is so worth it, and it's so much better than staying stuck in a cult or religion mindset.
Good perspective. I love too just realizing that we're talking in some ways about empowerment and about autonomy, and in that to acknowledge that there are seasons of our lives when we're very, very vulnerable, where it's like you don't know how weak you are, you don't know how susceptible you are to being deceived or to going back to an abuser, just like someone could go back to an abusive spouse just because I've got no other options, or I feel like life was technically stable with you. Yes, you did give me black eyes, and yes, you called me names and screamed at me, but at least I had a roof over my head and I had stability and I knew where everything was coming from. And it's like there was stability of sorts there. And it's like they get you when you're vulnerable, when you're sort of, worldview wise, you're homeless, and you sort of can get tempted to go back to the abuser in different ways. And also just to be open, you can be so susceptible to almost anybody that's got answers. I mean, if you're in a desert and someone comes up to you and says, "I've got a jug of water in my hand, do you want some?" I mean, who's going to resist it? But you don't know what's in that jug. That could be poison for all you know. And yet when we're desperate, we're willing to take anybody's help and to say, this is sort of an exercise, yes, in developing a community, but also being careful, because you know that you have spent years and years and years listening to someone else tell you how it should be and what makes sense. And it's like, at a certain point, you have to train yourself to take everything with a grain of salt and say, I will listen to you and you and you, even though you're different from my former worldview, but you might also be wrong too. And I've noticed how for a lot of us, we end up getting suckered into different forms of fundamentalism, where we were before a fundamentalist JW or a fundamentalist Christian. Everything was black and white. We have all the answers and everyone else is wrong. And then you become an atheist and you're like, we have the answers and everyone else is wrong. It's like, we can be very susceptible to fundamentalism, even though we're shifting teams. And it's like, at a certain point, you have to admit we're really vulnerable, both to everyone else hurting us effectively, but also to our hurting ourselves because of so much programming. It's just, you don't see it. It's like it's invisible. And until you can really find the words, whether it's through a counselor or friends or just your own self-reflection, until you have the verbiage and the insights to say what really is driving all of my decisions and all of my thought process and my self-talk, till you can pull that apart really healthily, everyone else and yourself, we can be so deceived and deceive ourselves even further. And I love the fact that if you can admit that, I mean, just admitting it is half the battle, and saying, I don't want to be deceived, even if it's just me deceiving myself anymore. Therefore, I need to just slow down and just take all as much information in and just say, I don't have to make a decision. I don't have to go from JW to evangelical Christian today. I don't have to go there to atheist or agnostic. There's no rush. I can do whatever, and to take your time and just to feel the freedom of that, to say there's no urgency here. You're not going to burn in hell or be annihilated if you don't make a quick decision. And for so many of us, it was like, make a decision, quick. And when you step back and it's like, wow, like just the intensity of that, the pressure, the powder keg isn't the same as it was before with hell or Armageddon, but you can still stay in a psychological powder keg even after deconversion. And just to give yourself the freedom to just enjoy life. Like you said, go to the beach or the lake, like at least in your mind, like go to the beach and just sit on the sand and watch the waves and just enjoy being alive. And I think eventually you're like, I need my mind to slow the fuck down,
Yeah. I think, definitely like embrace the unknown. Like you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers. You can figure it out for yourself, what works for you. And sort of along with what you were saying is start thinking critically, like look into it, look into propaganda techniques so that you can see and research, but not like in a do your own research conspiracy theorist kind of way, but literally like prove to yourself, what you want to believe or don't want to believe, and figure it out. But there's no rush. Like you can just sit there and not know, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Especially as you know, if you are leaving a former worldview, you do have to have a grieving process of sorts anyway. So it's going to be a slow process either way.
Takes time.
It does. It really does. And there's no need to bury things that are going to come back up later if we don't do it right. In terms of your channel, going back to that, your channels, I should say, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube a little bit. You're doing great work there. Could you tell us what prompted you to get started, and sort of if you can sort of hopefully expand your channels and keep producing content? What's your hope for where you take it from here?
So I actually started about 6 months after I left the Witnesses, like unofficially, officially. I started doing ex-Jehovah's Witness memes, and then from there jumped to TikTok once I realized that I could start speaking about my experience as a Jehovah's Witness and what they really believe. I just basically started making videos one day, found the ex-Jehovah's Witness community on TikTok really welcoming and encouraging, and I don't know, I just started making more and more and cross-posting them to Instagram. I do post them on my YouTube, and I eventually hope to do a proper long format YouTube at some point. I'm just trying to figure out how to set myself up for that. But yeah, for the moment, it's predominantly TikTok and Instagram.
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, everyone, please do check those out. Like and subscribe, especially even on YouTube, even though you're not doing as much there, just so that when the time is right, that a lot of subscribers will see your great work. That is really, really awesome stuff. And I love too just how, whether it's JW's or my background, once you share your story, you never know, but you literally, as they say, could become someone else's survival manual. Someone else, it's like, yeah. I don't think I could live if, I mean, I've heard people even say it years ago, like, if my religion isn't real, I don't want to live. If God's not real, if Jesus isn't real, I don't see a reason to live. And I don't know how many people literally take that, to the point of like, I don't think it's real, so I'll commit suicide. I hope people don't do that, but I'm sure people feel that way. Like I'm as good as dead if this isn't real. And it's so amazing to think that they can come across, your story, my story, one of the other people that we would talk to and be like, yeah, I can relate. And I think I'll be okay. I think I might have a shot at being okay again.
Jehovah's Witnesses teach that, if you leave, you're basically going to be found dead doing drugs in a ditch, basically. It's very awful. Everything's horrible for you. And I guess a big purpose of my channel as well is to show that there is life outside the religion. We're not all I don't know, even if someone is doing drugs or whatever, but like we're not all doing these horrible things, living a miserable life without Jehovah. We're having fun, we're living our real lives, and it's not all doom and gloom the way the Witnesses teach. And even so, like, hearing experiences about ex-evangelicals or ex-Mormons or ex-fundamentalist Mormons, whatever it may be, hopefully a Jehovah's Witness might see it and wake up and see the similarities and think, oh my goodness, like my religion's like that, and like vice versa. If an evangelical might come across my account, they'll be like, hey, there's some similarities with my religion, like maybe I should start looking into it. So I think like every voice helps, every voice should be heard, to sort of show the pattern in the way that Christianity and religion hurts people. So yeah.
Agreed 100%. That is so true. I love it. It's honestly, if I could have foreseen my life taking the turns it did, and I'm sure you probably couldn't foresee yours either, but to think if I could have foreseen it, I would have thought this is going to be a very sad outcome. But then to see how it's evolved, where it's like you get more peace than you've ever had before. Honestly, I think I'm arguably a better parent than I've ever been before. Love my kids more and more gentle than ever before in every which way. Gentle with them, gentle with me, gentle with everybody. Just like you get to a point where you're like, I'm truly a better person, and the whole best life thing, it's just not true. Like JWs are not living the best life. The best life is outside of JWs and outside of evangelical Christianity. And when it really hits you, like, yeah, I'm living the best possible life for with the cards I've been dealt. It's a beautiful thing, and you just want to pass that joy into others. And I know that for me, just to say this one last thing, I definitely became a nihilist, part of the atheism. Like, I don't think any of this matters, ever will, ever could. But, I was warned so much in Christianity that if you ever lean towards and get into nihilism, there's no beauty left. There's nothing left. It's just deadness. It's just like we're just random math. And I get why they said that. I kind of technically understand it. But almost everyone that I've ever really dove into this topic with has said, honestly, the further I get away from Christianity, the more beautiful life becomes and the more at peace I am with myself and the universe. And I'm just happier. And anything that would go back to that would be a step into toxicity and so much badness. Like, I'm just so happy. I see more beauty than I've ever had before. And I think part of it is like, you know that you're seeing, like, the universe is beautiful, but you're not seeing it through that filter of like, okay, I'm looking up at the stars, but I see it through the lens of Jehovah's sort of, the actual filter here, or Jesus. It's like, no, I'm just looking at the beauty of the stars, and I don't see angels and demons fighting above me, in a sense, metaphorically or invisibly, up in the air fighting their wars. It's like, no, it's just the beauty of starlight. And looking at other people and not seeing them as these wicked sinners that need a sin, fixer. It's like, you're a beautiful human that you're randomly here, but you're here for a moment, and I'm going to celebrate your life while I can. It just gets more beautiful. And like you said, with the music and so forth, and the art, you want to create more poems. You want your life to be more of a poem than it's ever been before. And you want to help other people to be like, your life truly can be a poem and a song and a work of art. And boy, oh boy, if you could just see it. And I feel bad for the people that truly don't see it at first, but from my experience, again, most people, when you give them enough time away from the cult, it eventually hits like, it took a while. It took a minute, but I see it now. And it's great.
It's not like, oh, nothing matters. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can wear my hair in a mohawk, or I could shave it all off. It doesn't matter. Like, that kind of a thing. It's not like, oh, life doesn't matter without God and everything's sad and depressing. It's literally just like everything is random and you can find the fun in it.
Yeah. I was using the illustration. I said, while you're like, if you met somebody on the street and they gave you a check, like for a lot of money, and they said, you need to hold on to this for a while, but in a few years you can cash it. And when you do, you'll be very wealthy. And you put it in the drawer and keep it real safe and secure. And a couple of years pass, you go to the bank and try to cash it when they told you to. And the bank says that was just a bum on the street writing bad checks. They were never going to cash. That's as good as monopoly money. I'm sorry. If you'd never met that guy and he never gave you the bad check, you wouldn't be sad now. But because you convinced yourself for so long that you had this grand outcome coming, now you're kind of sad and pissed. Like, I thought I was going to heaven. I thought I was getting great things happening. I thought I had a mansion happening here with this $1 million check. But just because you convinced yourself you had it and now you realize you don't, doesn't mean you should be sad. It means you should put yourself back in the frame of mind that says, if I had never met this deceiver, I would have just kept walking down the street and had a beautiful day. And like, exactly. that opportunity is still there for you. You have to get out of that stuck mode. But anyway, well, I appreciate so much you sharing your story. By the way, I love your accent. I always love hearing accents from New Zealand and Australia and the UK. Was there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully it was okay.
That was awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll just wrap up then by saying we've been speaking with Micki McAllen. Micki, thank you so much. Great to get to know you. Great to hear your story. We'll do it again sometime, I'm sure, but appreciate your work. Keep it up. We need people like you in the community, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.